Hello, everybody. If you can just sit tight for one moment as I make sure we're good to go. Okay. It does look like we're live on X and on YouTube. Hello, Valerie from Witway. And Jim, nice to see you there. Ogblader, hello. I'm sure others will be joining us shortly. So today, yeah, my comrade Rami Yahya continues to be preoccupied. Hi, Alan. How you doing? Preoccupied by other activities at the moment. He has returned to Canada from China, and hopefully we'll be hearing about his activities in China, particularly in the Uyghur part of the country, Xinjiang, very soon. Um, in the interim, today's program, I'll be, as I say, on this alone. Hi, Stan from BC. Catfish, hello, Theo, nice to see you. I'll be dealing with this alone, at least for the first 40 minutes or so. And the focus of the entire discussion today is going to be, of course, the Israeli and Western-backed war of aggression on Iran. Before I get into that subject, I just wanted to update those who saw the last report I did before I left Greece about 10 days ago. That report from Athens, I commented towards the end of it that I would be curious to see whether the Canadian authorities were going to interrogate me upon my return to the country. And I explained that there was a possibility of that happening because in the first half of this year, I've been out of Canada until June 10th for several months. And during my absence from the country, I did a number of things which were likely to have attracted the ire, although with no justification from Canada's spy agency and law enforcement authorities. These were activities that are perfectly legal for anybody, but above all for a journalist like me. But that doesn't stop them from, trying to intimidate people who engage in these sorts of journalistic activities. One of the things I did while I was out of the country was I attended in February the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah, the now assassinated former Secretary General of Hezbollah. On that same trip, I traveled to the Lebanese border with occupied Palestine to report on Israel's wholesale destruction of Lebanese villages near the border. Last month, I traveled to Tehran, the capital of Iran, for the Sobe Media Festival. And while I was there, I met and spoke with the spokesperson of the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization, as well as a brigadier general from the Aerospace Forces of the Islamic Republic, and the director of the international arm of the Iranian state broadcaster, which has now been bombed brutally by the genocidal entity. All these three individuals were under sanction by Western governments at the time that I spoke to them in my capacity as a journalist. And so, there were people who, neocons, Zionists, various militaristic types on social media who were calling for my head on a platter because I was engaging in these journalistic activities. Some said I should be arrested. Others said, and they were like tagging the Canadian spy agency in their comments on social media that I should be barred from entering the country, all kinds of nonsense. And because the Canadian spy agency has interrogated friends of mine, activists and journalists and academics, when they returned recently from trips to Russia, and I've reported on that, at least three people I know personally and am close to personally have had that experience. I thought maybe this time around they'll try to engage in the same sort of intimidation tactics with me, but none of that happened. There were no questions posed to me about my activities outside of the country when I returned to Montreal on June 10th. It's a bit of a mystery to me why they're targeting friends of mine, but not me. I'm not disappointed. I'm very happy that I haven't had to deal with these unpleasant experiences. but it seems odd. And the best explanation I can come up with is that maybe because I'm a lawyer and not just a journalist, they're more reluctant to engage in this kind of shenanigan with me. Who knows? In any event, it's good to be back in Montreal after a significant absence. And with that, I'd like to return to the question of the Western-backed Israeli crime of aggression against the Iranian nation. So in the first part of this live stream, I'm going to focus on Iran's most recent missile attacks on the genocidal entity. Then in about 30 to 40 minutes, we'll discuss the danger of this war expanding to include other countries. One of those countries is Pakistan. To explore the possibility of Pakistan becoming involved in some way, we will be joined at about the 40-minute mark of this live stream by Aman Ullah Tariq, who is the host of the Eon podcast in Pakistan. Aman has appeared on Reason to Resist before, and he always offers excellent insights and analysis into Pakistan's domestic politics and its relations with neighboring states. As many of you will know, Pakistan shares a 900-kilometer border with Iran. Also, like Iran, it is a predominantly Muslim country, and unlike Iran, it actually possesses a nuclear arsenal. Therefore, what Pakistan does in response to Israel's Western-backed war on Iran could be of immense importance, not only to the peoples of Pakistan and Iran, but even to the entire world. So now let's look at some videos of missile strikes that happened today in Israel. And I'd like to begin with a rather remarkable strike on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. You can see it doesn't appear to have caused, structural damage, at least the kind that would render the building uninhabitable, but certainly very significant damage appears to have been done to that building. Something rather bizarre happened when this strike occurred, and namely, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange hit a 52-week high this morning. That's right, the highest level it's been at in a year. It achieved at the same time that Iran struck the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Now, who knows? I mean, a lot of strange things go on in the genocidal entity. Why investors would view that as a reason for bullish investment escapes me. The media outlet, an Indian media outlet that was covering this attack, it's called ABP Live, theorized as follows. It's first of all recounted that according to Al Jazeera, the latest Iranian offensive involved the launch of 25 missiles targeting key locations, including the Israeli Stock Exchange. Nonetheless, the TASE, I guess that's Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, all-share index climbed 0.5%, reaching a 52-week peak of 2,574.89. And then there were a couple of nearer indices, which followed suit, hitting new yearly highs as well. And the ABP Live goes on to say the flagship TA 125 index has shown a strong upward trend since hostilities began on June 13th, posting a 5% gain during this period. In fact, the index has been on a consistent rise, up 4.53% in April and 6.55% in May, suggesting strong investor confidence in the underlying economic fundamentals despite external threats. Man, If investors believe that the underlying economic fundamentals in Israel are strong, I've got some swampland in Florida to sell to these clowns. In any case, this type of behavior on the part of markets really shouldn't surprise us. After all, the Dow Jones Industrial Average has climbed from a low of about 6,500 points in 2009 to about 43,000 points today. It's in the range of 43,000 points. It has experienced an absolutely gigantic increase, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, even though the American economy has been anemic at best during the 16 years that have elapsed since 2009. I recently discussed this with economist Professor Kostas Lapavitsas of the University of London, and he agreed with me readily that the stock markets bear absolutely no relationship nowadays to the underlying fundamentals of the economy. I assume that's true in Israel too. It certainly appears to be the case. Also, I suspect that a large proportion of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange capitalization comes from companies in the military industrial sector, like Elbit Systems. So they, of course, love this war. They're crazy about this war. They're going to make money hand over fist from this war. So that would help to explain why investors were giddy with joy as the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange was being struck by an Iranian missile this morning. So let's turn to some other news in the missile warfare front. Let's start by looking at another Iranian strike, a video of another Iranian strike this morning, June 19th. Just bear with me here.
هاي هون الصاروخ اللي نزل السما كلها مبرومة. هاي نزل هون.
That, I believe, that video was taken by a Palestinian in Tel Aviv. And next, I'd like to show you a video of the aftermath of another punishing strike that took place this morning. I believe that this too was taken in Tel Aviv.
בבית ספר ובבניין. לא ידוע אם יש נפגעים. פאק. זעקות לעזרה מכל הכיוונים.
Fuck indeed. Those sure look like strong economic fundamentals to me. But I digress. Let's go on and look more closely at what's transpiring in the genocidal entity nowadays. Here is actually, I'm going to turn now to some very interesting reports about Israel's air defense systems. This one has been widely viewed, this particular video, but it, just in case you haven't seen it, it certainly bears showing, merits another view. This is an Israeli air defense system turning on itself.
Having the barrage as a new method of attack, claimed the strike not only breached Israeli airspace, but also revealed critical vulnerabilities in Israel's multi-layered defense systems. According to the IRGC, as reported by Reuters, the tactic caused Israeli interceptors, including the Iron Dome, to mistakenly target one another.
Now, what you see there, reportedly, are missiles going up from an Israeli air defense system. The commentator here from Times Now World refers to it as the Iron Dome. I suspect that this is a Patriot missile system, which has been rebranded as an Israeli air defense system. But whatever it is, watch what happens to these missiles that have been launched by this Israeli air defense system.
Allowing Iranian missiles to bypass defenses and strike high-value assets. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have not responded to the claims or the overnight assault.
So what appears to have happened there, you can see the flames in the distance. That's where the air defense missiles struck. It was a huge explosion, and a consensus amongst commentators seems to be that what that air defense system did, the one that launched the missiles, was it attacked another Israeli air defense system, which would explain why the explosion upon impact was so violent. And in fact, as there were secondary explosions, I believe, suggesting that it was in fact some other, it was at least at a bare minimum, there were munitions there where those missiles landed. One military expert on social media, I believe it was Will Schreier, speculated that what happened was that the Iranians somehow managed to hack into the air defense system that launched those two missiles. He wasn't able to confirm this, but it was a theory that he developed, and that they actually Iranian hackers caused the Israeli air defense system to attack another one. In any event, whatever happened, it doesn't suggest a high level of competence on the part of those who are operating those air defense systems, nor does it suggest a high level of efficacy on the part of the technologies themselves. So this leads me to an interview which I saw yesterday by a legitimate expert in missile technology and air defense. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. What I do want to say before we go to that interview is that it is now beyond question, in my view, that Iran can strike anything in Israel that lies on the surface and is not buried deep underground. And I suspect, given the size of the warheads on some of these hypersonic missiles, they could strike targets that are buried a significant distance below the surface. But again, I don't have the expertise to comment upon that. As I've said many times, I'm not a military expert. I'm not an expert in missile technologies. And so that's why I'm going to share with you this expert of someone who is a world-class expert in both of those subjects, military missile technologies and air defense. And you will have heard of him, many of you. His name is Theodor Postel. He's a professor emeritus from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's worked extensively with the US military. As an aside, Professor Postel, he talked about this recently, is of Jewish origin, and he has been an outspoken critic of Israel's genocidal regime. He's really condemned it in powerful and eloquent language in the recent months. The excerpt of the interview I'm going to show you took place on the Deep Dive. It's a program with retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, who does excellent reporting from a military perspective on what's happening in West Asia and on the Ukraine war. This interview of Theodor Postel was published yesterday, and here's some of what Professor Postel had to say.
Can do. I guess it's really going to come down to who has the bigger arsenals of attack missiles. Maybe not even so much.
Who can take more punishment?
Yeah, because and that's just something we don't know.
I just want to pause there. So that was a very important exchange. Daniel Davis begins by saying, he's quite properly observing that nobody outside of the Israeli and Iranian governments appears to know, and maybe the U.S. government, how many missiles each side has, how many air defense missiles Israel has, how many offensive missiles, how many air defense missiles Iran has, and how many air defense missiles, how many systems of air defense. That's what Daniel Davis says at the outset, and he's interrupted by Ted Postal, who says, and also their capacity to absorb the punishment. Let's watch this again.
Who has the bigger arsenals of attack missiles? Maybe not even so
Who
much
can
the
take more
interceptor.
punishment?
Yeah.
Who could take more punishment? So imagine a scenario where both sides have roughly equivalent arsenals, but one side is able to take punishment much more than the other side. Well, it's the latter that is likely to prevail in this conflict, even though they have more or less the same amount of munitions. So I think Theodore Postal is quite right in pointing out it's not just a question of the size of the arsenals. It's also a question of your capacity to absorb the pain. And based upon history, I've commented upon this before, as have others. In my lifetime, Iran fought a brutal, devastating war against the Iraqi regime of Saddam Hussein, who invaded Iran in a war of aggression without lawful justification in 1980. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians died, and they were subjected repeatedly to chemical attacks with the assistance of Western countries and U.S. Intelligence agencies. And they did not defeat Iraq per se, but they repulsed the invader and ultimately were not obliged to give up any territory. And we all know where it would ultimately happen to Saddam Hussein, but the Islamic Republic is still here standing and fighting today, and probably stronger militarily than it's ever been. So if you ask me, the Iranians have demonstrated in my lifetime and lifetimes of many Iranians living today that they have a quite remarkable ability to absorb punishment. On the other hand, and as I'm going to discuss a little later on, the Israelis, within 48 hours of launching this criminal, insane war, were begging for the Trump administration to become involved on their side in a major way. So if I had to wager as to which side has the greater capacity to absorb punishment, I would not hesitate in choosing the Iranians. So let's hear what else Theodore Postal has to say.
Because and that's just something we don't know. We don't really know on either side how many offensive missiles Israel has, how many offensive missiles Iran has. But it seems like that there's, at least right now, after I think we're in the 6th day of this so far, both sides still have plenty to throw.
Well, the myth of Israeli missile defense capabilities may be evaporating with the population in Israel, because when Israel was trying and failing to intercept artillery rockets that were being fired from Gaza, these artillery rockets did not have tremendously large warheads, a few kilograms. And if it landed near you or went through the roof of your house and exploded and you were in a room, they'd kill you. But if you have a safe room, like the Israelis mandate by law, a place that's hardened against fragments and blast in your house, and you go into it and your house gets hit, you will almost certainly survive. You won't even be injured with a very high probability. If you're outside and you lie on the ground, unless the warhead lands extremely close to you within a few meters, you're not going to be killed. So the level of damage and havoc that was caused by these artillery rockets was not high. And when you lie to your population and you say you're intercepting 90% of them, people, it's possible to deceive some high percentage of your people. They're not technically well informed about these things. With the much higher yield warheads on the Iranian long-range ballistic missiles, these 1-ton warheads, it's a harder fiction to continue to promulgate. And I'll show you why.
So quite a bit packed into that 2-minute excerpt. So first of all, the language that he used. He called, this claim that Israel's air defenses are almost impenetrable and are effective, a myth. He a couple of times used the word lies. Then he said fiction. So in another part of the interview, which you didn't see there, he assessed that the Israeli air defenses were performing poorly. That's the word that he used. As I say, there's few, if any, people in the United States, in the West, frankly, who have the level of expertise and credibility when it comes to missile defense or air defenses and missile technologies as Theodore Postal. So all this crap that you're hearing about, Israel's ability to repel missile attacks is not only belied now by a mountain of videographic evidence, but it's also being confirmed by independent leading experts in this particular field. And this will have profound implications for Israel. As Ted Postal said, it's the myth is evaporating along with the Israeli population. Well, what does he mean? He means if this little pipsqueak of a country, its deranged leadership, can no longer persuade the population that they're safe, a lot of them are going to leave. And a lot of them have done just that. And the first ones who are going to go are going to be the ones who are most mobile. And the ones who are most mobile are the ones who are most educated and who have the most lucrative employment. These are the people that Israel would need most if it's going to have any chance of recovering from the devastation of its depravity, caused by its depravity. As I say, this is, I think, the fundamental reason. I've been saying this from November of 2023. When all the dust is settled, Israel is going to lose this thing that it has referred to over decades as the demographic war. It's going to get crushed in the demographic war, and Palestine will rise from the ashes, my friends. That's my prediction. It's been my prediction from day one, and I am more convinced of it than ever. So now let's move on to some other issues related to the missile war. I've seen some, suggestions in the media that because the initial volleys, salvos that were fired by Iran were big, reportedly 100 or more, maybe hundreds of missiles, and the more recent ones have been smaller, that somehow this means that Iran is running out of missiles. I don't purport to know how many missiles Iran has, but we heard this same shtick, in the first year of the Ukraine war. Day after day after day, we were told that the Russians were about to run out of missiles and artillery, and that they were, taking computer chips out of their washing machines in a desperate bid to, replace their depleted arsenals. I mean, here we are 3.5 years later, and Russia seems to have increased dramatically its capacity to strike targets within Ukraine by means of missiles and drones. There's certainly no indication that Russia's close to running out or will anytime within the remainder of this war. Now, of course, Russia has a much larger population and industrial base than Iran, but Iran has a very educated, highly educated population, 90 million, a significant population, and they've been preparing for this war for decades. Why would they, vary the size of their salvos, going from hundreds to maybe 10 or 15? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One is you don't want to be predictable, so you vary the tempo and the magnitude of the attacks to keep the enemy in a state of confusion and uncertainty. Another reason why the subsequent salvos were smaller than the initial ones is because Iran said we're using our older missiles in the initial exchange, and they may have decided that they were going to launch very large salvos of old missiles at the beginning to deplete Israel's air defenses, and then they would use in smaller numbers their more sophisticated, more precise, faster, and more powerful warheads in subsequent phases of the missile war. So there's plenty of reasons why, but I think you're probably going to see some large salvos in the days ahead if this continues, and there's no indication that it's going to stop anytime soon. That's all I have to say today about the missile warfare. Well, there is one other thing, not about the missile technologies or capabilities per se, but there is a claim by Israel that an Iranian missile struck a hospital in the south of the country called the Soroka Hospital. And today, following that strike, Israel's deranged defense minister, Israel Katz, proclaimed that Iran's supreme leader, quote, can no longer be allowed to exist, close quote. I wouldn't doubt, given the capacity of the demonstrated capacity of Israel's military and intelligence agencies to murder people, political leaders, and military leaders, something a capacity that they've refined to an art form over the many decades. It's probably the only damn thing they do well, other than mass murdering children and women. I wouldn't doubt their capacity to take out the supreme leader, but I think you can be confident that if they were to do that, Iran would cast aside any and all restraint, or be probably inclined to do that. And the result, the people who would suffer most intensely as a result of that extraordinary provocation would probably be the Israelis themselves. But, since when did the Netanyahu regime exhibit the slightest concern about the lives of ordinary Israelis? Now, when it comes to this claim that the Iranians targeted the hospital, the Iranian military has published a map of what it says is the immediate vicinity of the hospital. And you'll see that according to this map, this actually comes from Iran's Tasnim News, the Israelis have an army communications control and intelligence headquarters in the Gav Yam technology complex, which is beside the Soroka Medical Center. You can see it in the upper left-hand corner, according to this map. In fact, you'll see the words there, IDF Intelligence Campus. And then there's also another IDF facility. You'll see at the bottom, it says IDF C4 IHQ, the bottom of this map. Interestingly, Ted Postal said in this report, and he said in another report, his best estimate is that the Iranian missiles that have been used thus far are accurate to within a distance of 1 kilometer. And he's been clear, he can't be precise about this. That's his best guess. I would point out that, the Iranians have been saying they've not yet used in large quantities their most precise and advanced missiles. So maybe what we've seen thus far is their less accurate missiles for the most part. And that's what Professor Postal's estimate is based upon. But if he's right, it's entirely conceivable that the Iranians tried to strike one or both of these legitimate military targets and ended up causing the medical center to sustain substantial damage. Based on the video footage I've seen, the medical center hasn't been demolished or anything like that. It just has suffered significant damage. And the Iranians are saying that this was as a result of the blast wave from the explosion at the adjacent military target that was struck. So let me just remove that. And, before moving on, let's be clear here. I can't say whether the Iranians are telling the truth, but I can say this. No one has less credibility than the Israeli regime, especially when it comes to the destruction of hospitals. So unless and until they can provide credible, objective, and compelling evidence that this was, in fact, an intended target of the Iranian aerospace forces, I don't assume it to be true. And predictably, whether it is or is not true, they're apparently going to use it now as an excuse to escalate this war even further by targeting Iran's supreme leader. Meanwhile, as Israel and Iran trade blows from the air, Israel's genocide forces continue to suffer casualties in the Gaza Strip. The latest was an announced death of an Israeli terrorist masquerading as a soldier in the Gaza Strip. This is a report from Haaretz yesterday. They say that this soldier, again, they call him a soldier, but a more appropriate term would be terrorist. Staff Sergeant Stav Halfon, age 20, was hit while operating as part of a paratrooper combat team during an operation to destroy Hamas infrastructure. Just think about the Hamas infrastructure. How do they know it's Hamas infrastructure? Like, does Hamas put a flag on it and say, hey, yo, this is our infrastructure over here? Is there any infrastructure left standing? And, the Israelis themselves are constantly complaining that Hamas operates out of tunnels and comes to the surface amidst the wreckage that Gaza is today and attacks and then recedes into the tunnels. So what do they mean by Hamas infrastructure? I'll tell you what they mean. They mean civilian infrastructure. And they just put the word Hamas in front of it in order to justify its destruction. But that, I don't think will be news to many, if any, of the people listening to our program today. Now, what else is going on? Israel continues to massacre starving Palestinians seeking food at aid sites. Al Jazeera reports today that at least 84 people have been killed in Israeli attacks across the Gaza Strip. Among those killed since dawn on Thursday, 59 were in Gaza City and the north, and 16 others were waiting for aid assistance near the Netzarim corridor, which splits North and South Gaza. Israel's massacres of starving Palestinians at aid sites has become an almost daily occurrence since Israel set up these so-called aid sites. It is now becoming abundantly clear that the satanic regime is using aid purportedly for starving Palestinians as bait to basically bring large numbers of Palestinians out into the open en masse where they can be easily slaughtered. That's what's happening. And the most amazing, appalling thing about all of this is that even though this arguably constitutes the most depraved behavior we have seen from Israel in 20 months, the corporate media in the West seem more interested in reporting on Israeli colonists who are stranded in foreign countries than they are on the mass murder of starving Palestinians who are desperately seeking aid in Gaza. It's quite a time we live in. Now, reports have also emerged that people in Israel who are not Israeli are being prevented from entering bomb shelters. So I'm going to show you one such report. This was published on one of the resistance channels that I follow. And I'm going to show you the video, which is featured in this post. During an air raid, a Ukrainian woman who moved to Israel in search of safety, oh, my heart goes out to her, tried to take refuge in a nearby bomb shelter. According to her, she was not allowed into the shelter located in the neighboring house. There are no places and no one is obliged to let her in, she was told. And she comments in her video, this is the kind of Israeli solidarity. I can't tell you. I'm going to show you a bit of this thing, and maybe there are some Ukrainian speakers here who can understand what she's saying and can confirm to us the accuracy of the translation that's been provided by this Telegram channel. But here's a clip from her video. 1 second, please.
Сейчас нам прислали уведомление о том, что будет скоро сирена с Ирана. И мы пошли в соседний дом, в бомбоубежище, где нас не впустили. Они закрыли двери, закрыли парковку. Мы стучали в дверь, они вышли, сказали, мы не обязаны вас пускать. И сказали, у нас нету места. Вот такая вот солидарность израильская.
תפתחו דלת בבקשה.
זה לא בסדר. אתה לא בסדר. מה אנחנו עושים? מה את צריכה? תפתח דלת.
So as I say, I can't translate for you, and I'm going on the basis of the summary that was provided in this Resistance Telegram channel. But it looks to me like what happened, she's showing there is she went to the entrance of a bunker bomb shelter and was told by the people standing at the entrance that there was no space for her. In any case, none of that should surprise anyone who's grasped that Israel is a profoundly racist society. It's not simply Palestinians who are discriminated against in that society. There have been reports of people, Thai workers from Thailand who are in the country being deprived of access to bomb shelters. Even people who are Jewish but who are darker skinned, as has been reported credibly for many years, are subjected to discrimination in Israel, quite severe discrimination oftentimes. So it would be quite surprising, as a matter of fact, if non-Jewish Israelis were being allowed to use those bunkers as freely as Jewish Israelis in an apartheid state. That would be quite surprising. So let's move on. What is now going on from a big picture perspective? Israel's political and media elites are now demanding that the Donald become massively and directly involved in Israel's war of aggression on Iran. So let me show you an editorial, or the headline of an editorial that just appeared in the Jerusalem Post. Here we go. So this was published, I believe, yesterday, maybe the day before. Trump must, doesn't have a choice, folks. He must help Israel finish the job to dismantle Khamenei's regime. Mr. President, this extreme theocracy needs to fall. Make its destruction as explicit a policy as the defeat of Nazi Germany or Saddam Hussein's Iraq. I would be in complete agreement with that statement if the extreme theocracy being referred to was the Netanyahu regime. That's the extreme theocracy here. No rational person would say that Iran's theocracy is anywhere near as extreme as these lunatics. They're not the ones who are starving to death hundreds of thousands or millions of Palestinians and burning Palestinian children alive. No. That's the specialty of the extreme theocracy that rules over the Palestinian people in historic Palestine. In any event, if things are going so swimmingly for the genocidal regime in its war against Iran, which it commenced without provocation, why is the Jerusalem Post telling Trump that he must help Israel finish the job? I saw a post of an Israeli legislator, I can't remember her name, a few days ago, who was just hysterically frantically demanding that the Trump administration get involved. And the Israeli media has reported that request was made by the Netanyahu regime to the Trump administration less than 48 hours after this war was launched. So again, you don't have to be, a rocket scientist to see through the propaganda. If Israel is decisively winning this war and is days away, as many have claimed in the Western media, from finishing off the Islamic Republic, why the hell are editorials like this appearing in, the most widely read Israeli newspapers? Why are Israeli legislators demanding that Trump get involved? Why is the Netanyahu regime pressuring him to get involved even more than he already is, folks? I mean, what else do they need? They're getting air refueling. They're getting undoubtedly the best military intelligence that the satellite network of the United States, the largest, most sophisticated in the world, is able to provide. They're getting air defense protection, not just air defense systems, but they're scrambling American warplanes to shoot down Iranian drones. They're getting the munitions in gigantic quantities, economic aid, you name it. And yet all of that is not enough to enable the almighty Israeli military to finish off the Islamic Republic, which has been subjected to punishing sanctions for decades and has been repeatedly the subject of cyber attacks, targeted assassinations, including of nuclear scientists, long before this war began. None of this makes any sense. If things are going so well for the genocidal entity, they should be more than happy to finish the job themselves. So let's move on and look at something else in this regard. Something that almost caused me to fall off my chair when I read it. This is from another Israeli media organization, the Times of Israel. Enthralled by Israel's successes, Trump appears poised to join campaign against Iran. The U.S. president kept his options open in case Operation went awry, but with Israel racking up stunning achievements against Iran, he sees an opportunity. Tucker Carlson be damned. Oh, so this is the explanation, because rational people look at this and say, well, the reason why you're going to the Trump administration and saying you're not giving us enough help, all the help you're giving us is not sufficient to enable us to defeat Iran. You've got to get involved in a big way. Rational people look at that and say, well, that can only spell trouble for Israel. Must be going badly. And the video evidence certainly suggests that, as does Theodore Postal, who doesn't have any axe to grind with Israel and isn't, a paid servant of Iran. He's an independent expert of the highest caliber. We can all see that this is going terribly for the genocidal entity, but the Times of Israel has to come up with some explanation for gullible people. Why is Israel going to the Trump administration and begging them for help? It's because, and why would the Trump administration become involved? It's because they're enthralled. Trump is enthralled by Israel's successes. That's why he's going to put American lives at risk and put American aircraft carriers at risk and spend billions of dollars waging a direct war on the Islamic Republic. It's because he's enthralled by Israel's successes. Wow. There was a time when Israel's propaganda was actually quite good. It was world-class propaganda, but now it has become beyond laughable, frankly. And even the most hardcore Zionists should be able to see through this nonsense. So what is Trump ultimately going to do? I see a lot of speculation in the media that, including the alternative media, that Trump is really torn about all of this, and he may not get involved. He's concerned about the impacts this is going to have upon American forces and the American economy, and how this might upset his base. I am not buying any of that, folks. I think the plan has always been, I think that Trump would be more than happy for Israel to finish off Iran if it had the ability to do that, if he could achieve his objective of destroying the country without having to commit large numbers of U.S. forces and put at risk American soldiers' lives and major American military assets. If he could achieve the destruction of Iran without doing any of those things, I'm sure he'd prefer that. Sure, why not? But clearly he can't. So, and that's becoming increasingly apparent. And so I think that's exactly where we're heading. We're heading to some kind of an attack directly by U.S. forces on Iran. It may already be happening on a small scale, and they're lying to us and saying that this is all Israeli warplanes that are launching these bombs and missiles. But whatever the American involvement is to date, it's clearly not enough to secure victory for the genocidal entity. So the Donald now has a choice. He can basically implicitly or explicitly concede Israel's defeat and the defeat indirectly of the United States by bringing an end to the attacks on Iran, or he can escalate. I think, you'd be naive to believe he's going to do the former. Most likely he will do the latter. Again, I'd love to be wrong about this, but that's, I believe, where we're heading. For me, the more serious question is, what is the form and nature of the direct U.S. military intervention going to look like? Probably won't involve the introduction of a large number of ground forces into Iran. I don't think even Trump is that suicidal. But it may involve the introduction of special forces into Iran. There may already be U.S. special forces in some parts of the country. But a large-scale use of ground forces, that would be very surprising. Definitely, I think the Americans will attack Iran's nuclear facilities. I suspect they're going to do everything they can to destroy Iran's conventional ballistic missile capabilities, which means hunting for launchers, missile launchers, weapons depots, production facilities. And probably because this is what the United States government does, they'll go after civilian infrastructure along with their rabid Israeli attack dog. I saw a post the other day which reminded us that the United States, during its most recent hostilities against Yemen, destroyed a cancer hospital, an oncology center in Sana'a in Yemen. It was basically tried to level the port of Hodeidah, which is essential to the sustenance of the population there. That one of the most impoverished populations in the world, thanks to American aggression. So, would it all surprise me to see the American airstrikes and missile strikes go well beyond military targets and focus on assets that are purely of a civilian nature, are not even dual-use assets, for the simple purpose of destroying the country, rendering it a failed state, and eliminating any and all resistance to American hegemony in the region. Do I think they're going to achieve that goal? I think it's possible, but I don't believe that they will. I think that Iran has, quite apart from its ability to inflict devastating damage on its enemies in the region with its missiles and drones, and I don't think, for the most part, we've seen yet the most sophisticated missiles and drones that Iran has, at least not on a large scale. Quite apart from all of that, Iran has two cards that it can play, which so far it's refrained from using, but which will put us in an even more dangerous place than we are currently. One of those cards is the nuclear option, is to actually develop nuclear weapons. And whatever damage the U.S. and Israel managed to inflict in this war on Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran will have the capacity, very likely, to rebuild its nuclear enrichment capability. I've seen multiple experts acknowledge that possibility, and they will have more of an incentive than ever to go nuclear. Let us hope it doesn't come to that, but that's an option that they will have. And the other option, which would be much easier for them to pursue, it's a different type of nuclear option, and that is to set the oil industry, the oil and gas industry in West Asia on fire. Some of you may recall a turning point in the Saudi-led criminal war of genocide against the Yemeni people was a drone attack on a huge Saudi Aramco facility. And it was widely acknowledged at the time that that facility was protected by American air defense systems, American manufactured air defense systems, purportedly of the highest caliber, and that the Ansar Allah forces had used cheap drone technology. They swarmed the facility and managed to inflict severe damage on it. And that was, I believe, a very sobering moment for the Saudi autocracy, and is a big part of the reason why ultimately they entered into an uneasy truce with Ansar Allah, because they realized that Ansar Allah had the ability to destroy their oil industry. Well, if Ansar Allah can do it, there's no question that Iran could do it, and Iran could do it without using its most sophisticated missiles. It could probably do it using cheap drones, and there's no question that it can completely shut down the Strait of Hormuz. So, in effect, Iran could put a gun to the head of the global economy. And that is an option which I think, if they're down to, the last card they have to play, they don't feel that they can stop the attempt to destroy their country by any means other than setting the, fossil fuels industry of the West Asia on fire. They may well choose that alternative. After all, every stinking, dirty, putrid trick in the book has been used against them. So if they feel that this is all that they have left, they may well do that. So this brings me to the question of China. We're going to be joined shortly by our friend Aman Tariq to discuss Pakistan, but I want to talk about China while we're waiting for him to join us. China obtains 73%, I should say, 73% of the oil that China consumes is imported. And I want to show you the breakdown of the major sources of the oil. You'll see here the top, in 2024, the top provider of oil, crude oil to China was Russia, interestingly. By far the largest, accounting for 18.8% of China's crude oil imports. It was surprising to me that Malaysia is second at 10.3%, but then comes Saudi Arabia at almost 10%, followed by Iraq at 38%. At 7.6%, $38.2 billion worth. The UAE at 5.9%, Oman at 5.5%. And if you go down further, Qatar at 3.8%, and Kuwait at 2.2%. Interestingly, Iran doesn't appear on that list, even though China is by far the largest purchaser of oil from Iran. And it may be that China just doesn't like to publicize the amount of oil it's buying from Iran, or it may just be that it's China is buying a lot more oil from other countries, from 15 other countries. But Iran doesn't appear on that list for whatever reason. And obviously, this is just the top 15. So there are other countries from West Asia, oil producers, from which China is obtaining oil. They're just not in the top 15. So when you add all of this up, just the West Asian states that are identified in that list of the top 15 providers of oil, it's more than 35% of China's oil imports come from West Asia. And as I say, 73% of the oil consumed by China is imported. So what does this all mean? What this all means, my friends, is that if the Iranian forces and government play the blow up the petroleum industry card because they feel they have no other option, this is going to be very, very bad for the Chinese economy, not just for the global economy, but for China in particular. And I suspect that that's one reason, a big reason, why Iran has not done anything at this stage to block the flow of oil and gas out of West Asia. And it has had a gas facility attacked by the Israeli entity. It responded to that by attacking one of Israel's 2 refineries. It may have attacked the other one, but I've not seen credible reports about that. It attacked the Bazan oil refinery in Haifa, set it on fire. The thing has been closed indefinitely. It produces approximately twice as much fuel as the other oil refinery in the country, which is in Ashdod. So assuming that oil refinery is still in functioning and hasn't been destroyed or disabled, the capacity of the genocidal entity to produce fuel has been severely degraded. That's the way Iran chose to respond for now to the attack on its gas production facility. I believe it's the largest one in the world, if I'm not mistaken, the one that was attacked by Israel. The option is available to them to bring the petroleum industry in West Asia to a standstill, and I think they can do that without using their most advanced weapons. So what does this all mean? Well, I would imagine that there's some interesting conversations going on between the Iranian leadership and the Chinese government. Maybe those conversations are going along the following lines. President Xi, we really don't want to play that card. We understand how important it is to maintain the flow of oil to China from West Asia. You are our strategic partner. We want to do everything possible to minimize any harm or impacts upon the good people of China and the Chinese economy. But, we're basically up against the entire West here. And now the Trump administration is talking about coming in. We feel that our future as a nation is at risk, that they're trying to destroy the Iranian nation. And so, regrettably, we might have to play that card at some point. The chances that we'll be put in that position would, of course, be mitigated considerably if you were to give us some help. So what say you, President Xi? Are you willing to provide us with some advanced air defense systems and rocket fuel and other material that we need to stave off the imperialist powers in their diabolical mission to destroy our country? Whether or not the conversation of that nature is going on between the governments of Iran and China, we're talking about very sophisticated actors here, and I can't imagine that the Chinese government isn't acutely aware of the risk that Iran will be forced, its leadership will, in its view, be forced to resort to a retaliatory measure that it's going to have very negative impacts, I would think, on the Chinese economy. So we'll have to see. And there have been reports, as we mentioned in prior episodes, of cargo planes, the contents of which are unknown, flying from China to Iran within the last couple of days. As I mentioned, Pakistan also has a 900-kilometer border with Iran. And so presumably if the Chinese wanted to transit military goods or war material, for example, rocket fuel and so forth, they could do that through Pakistan by land. So they definitely have the technical means and the practical ability to resupply Iran's military forces throughout this battle. And in my view, they have a strong incentive to do that. They may be withholding that assistance for now because they see that Iran is at least holding its own and arguably has even the upper hand. And perhaps they're going to refrain from providing direct military assistance until they feel that's absolutely necessary. But we'll just have to see how all of this unfolds. In any case, that is certainly one way in which this war could expand. China becoming involved in some capacity. And even if it's China doesn't, and I don't think China would introduce its own military forces into this conflict. But if the Americans come to the conclusion that China is providing key military support to Iran in the way of weapons, munitions, rocket fuel, and so forth, it's the Americans who may decide to escalate and put Iran in a situation where, or China in a situation where it would have to employ its military forces. I don't think that's likely, but I think that that is certainly a possibility. So with that, we have been joined by our dear friend, Aman Tariq from the Eon podcast. Thank you for coming into the conversation, brother.
Much. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Sorry for the lateness, but I've been listening to your live stream right now. How's everything in Greece, boss? Are you in Canada?
I returned to Canada 10 days ago.
Right. Very unfortunate.
Yes. I wish I had been in Greece when the genocidal war criminal Netanyahu landed in Athens.
Yeah.
As he did.
I think you could have shown up like the resort in Malta.
Yes.
That was a classic.
So how are you doing, brother? You doing well?
Alhamdulillah. I think that Pakistanis have been up for like a month at night since the conflict with India, and now the issue with our neighbor Iran. What's going on with the genocidal entity of Israel?
I have so many questions. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to get right into it because I have so many questions for you about this. I'm fascinated by this situation. So I was watching an episode of The Cradle a few days ago, and The Cradle, you can learn so much by watching the alternative media, can't you? So I learned that years ago, Netanyahu proclaimed his desire to deprive Pakistan of its nuclear arsenal.
Yes.
I haven't been able to find the video. The Cradle played the video. It was obviously at a time when the satanic war criminal was much younger, but something similar just emerged from the discourse in Israel. I want to show you.
I've seen it. The professor.
Yes.
Professor at the
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. The professor at the Hebrew University.
Yes, Mir Mazri. So the Google translation of this post is, after Iran's campaign, we may seek to dismantle Pakistan's nuclear program. Good luck with that, dude. So so first of all, I want to just comment on this, okay? If you wanted to dissuade Pakistan from helping the Iranians, this is the worst possible way to do it.
Yes.
Like, what the hell was that man thinking? Right? What a fool. The arrogance, the stupidity, incredible. But what is your take on all of this, Aman? What do you make it, and what do you think the Pakistani government and military think about all of this?
Since you started off with our nuclear program and the bad blood that we've had with Israel, first of all, I'd like to bring to the attention of the audience that from amongst the quote-unquote Muslim governments in the region, excluding this particular conflict where it has been reported that Iran might have taken out up to 6 Israeli fighter jets, and we will find out soon enough, inshallah. Pakistan is the only quote-unquote Muslim country that has taken down Israeli fighter jets historically in the 67 war. We used to fly out of Hafiz al-Assad's Damascus and Homs, and we aided the then Ba'athist Arabs at the very inception of Pakistan in 1948. Qaid-e-Azam, the founding leader of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, his name was, who happens to be a Shia, by the way, from Gujarat, which is the religious denomination of the Irani people. So Pakistan has a very deep religious connection with Shia Islam, considering the founder was one. He sourced weapons from Czechoslovakia that included rifles and helicopters, and he gave them for free from our first budget to the Egyptians and to the Palestinian fighters, to the then Palestinian Liberation Organization. And we've had a historical relationship with the Palestinian people and with Palestine, which has had its ups and downs. It's not one way or the other. We've had ups and downs, but we've had a relationship. And as far as our nuclear program is concerned, Pakistan has always had its nuclear program threatened by Israel. In the late 80s and 90s, when American news media was already reporting whether or not, Tel Aviv will slam or bomb Kahuta, which is the city which is a small mountainous town where we had our first atomic base. In secret, it was meant to be a civilian thing, but then you know how these things work. It was well known in the intelligence community and in foreign policy circles, but it wasn't a public thing. Israeli air jets were supposed to. There was a particular British Airways flight, I think it was 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. flight that used to come in from London to Islamabad. The Israelis were supposed to use that as cover, a civilian airliner, which is very, I think, very apropos, considering Israel is always using civilian infrastructure to do its naughty business, its nefarious activities. It was supposed to use the British Airways, a civil airliner flight, and it was supposed to bomb our nuclear plant. And I've spoken to people in the Pakistani Air Force. They've flown air missions during that particular decade, every single day without fail, that accompany the civil airliner. Because there was a chance that Israeli fighter jets would hide beneath the radar signal and be underneath the wings of the civil airliner. And this is regardless of the fact that Pakistan has been a non-NATO ally since the 60s and 70s. It's been an American ally and then a non-NATO ally and subsequently an ally in the war on terror. And I suspect that this is the only reason why we've been able to develop a nuclear program under the garb of our being a Western asset in South and Central Asia. But there's been a slow and inevitable departure because at the same time, we've had this very inexplicable historic relationship with China, as it was displayed in May to the world. We've always known this. We've always talked about this. It's part of the cultural framework of Pakistan to honor the Chinese and to have a very deep sense of respect, because the Kashgar, the way you cross into Pakistan, there's a big memorial there, and all Pakistani knows that thousands of Pakistani laborers died making that, and hundreds of Chinese engineers died, and they're all buried there together. And that's when we coined the term for each other as Iron Brothers. So our relationship with China has always been there, regardless of our NATO allegiance. So in all of this sort of messed up, sort of gobbledygook relationship that we've had with the West, we've had a consistent enmity with Israel. And I think Israel has found its natural allegiance in India, and specifically in Hindutva India. And here in Pakistan, one of the weirdest things that happened is that when the Indians attacked this May, they were equipped, after the initial skirmish and they were beat back, they were equipped not only by Hebron drones that the Israelis brought in, they were being operated by Israelis from India, which is insane. Because if you saw in the future that you plan to do this attack against Iran, why would you try to push away a potential ally of the West, or even a silent partner? Because Pakistan has had a history, because there is an analogy that people a lethargic analogy that you can make between Afghanistan and the war on terror there, and now this war against Iran and how Pakistan can play a pivotal role. I personally think the America is not the America of 2001. Iran is not Afghanistan. Pakistan is not the Pakistan of 2001. It's a lethargic example. It's not intellectually very robust. But even if you were to accept that paradigm, why would you try to push Pakistan into this sort of bully Pakistan into a corner where it is forced to become an ally of Iran?
Mhm.
Iran has had a very bad relationship with Pakistan historically. It's one of constant espionage. We spy on each other. We support separatist factions in each other's countries. We mess around with Jundullah, which is a separatist movement in Balochistan, which is a Sunni separatist faction. The Iranians would go to the extent of their alliance with India that they would have Indian merchant navy officers and intelligence officers in Balochistan helping organize separatism in Pakistani Balochistan. And the point isn't to bring up bad blood, but to explain the extent of the paranoia that these two states have had. And for example, when Pakistan was developing its nuclear program in the 70s and 80s, some of the nuclear material that we spread all over the world, we gave it to Libya and North Korea and you name it. One of them was Iran. And our head nuclear scientist was sanctioned internationally and lived his life out in house arrest because Iran went to the global community and that was when Iran pursued a policy of not even messing about with nuclear technology. And they were the ones who capitulated to Western pressure. And the point of this is not to drum up Pakistani anger against Iran, but to explain the complexity of the diplomatic relationship we've had. And now you force Pakistan into a position by Israel, by America, where Pakistan can do nothing but support Iran. It would be absolutely absurd for Pakistan to provide air cover, intelligence, ground support, any of those options. It would be absurd. The blowback, Pakistan is 50% Shia, 15% Shia. Many of the militias that went into Syria via Iran at the time of Soleimani, being trained in Iraq and Syria, like the Zainabiyun and Fatimiyun, mostly came from Pakistan and Afghanistan. They still live here. Most of them did come back after the war. Some of them were in prison in Syria. Some of them died, obviously. We have a deep militant religious element within Pakistan. The Shia community is well integrated in Pakistani politics, police, military, air force, you name it. They're very deeply, and I don't want to use the word entrenched because it sounds like they're fifth columnists or I'm otherizing them. My point is to explain, because of a lack of vocabulary, they're a very well integrated community of Pakistan.
Mhm.
Why would Pakistan take on this blowback? They have a huge. I'm talking in purely cynical terms, try to get it through the head of these idiot Israelis. Like, what are they doing?
Let's look at statements that came out of the Pakistani government today. So according to Dunya News, which I imagine is a Pakistani media outlet, during the weekly media briefing on Thursday in Islamabad, Foreign Office spokesperson Shafkat Ali Khan said that Pakistan strongly condemns the unjustified and illegal Israeli attacks on Iran. Quote, Israeli aggression violates the international laws. Iran has the full right of self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. He added that Iran is fully cooperating in the evacuation of Pakistani nationals. Nearly 3,000 Pakistanis have already been evacuated. The spokesperson also condemned any targeting of Iran's nuclear facilities, calling it a direct attack on Iranian sovereignty and territorial integrity. And he added, quote, this aggression has been collectively rejected by 21 Muslim countries in a joint statement declaring Israeli actions a clear violation of the UN Charter. So I imagine that none of that is going to please the Trump administration. In fact, I saw some report that the Pakistani official had been summoned to the White House or something like that to watch it. But
that's not true. That's really, yeah. So what we had,
just put that aside. But I think you'll agree with me that this is probably quite irksome to the Trump administration, this kind of language. But going beyond the rhetoric, and I just want to point out to people, Pakistan not only has a border with Iran, it has a border with China. So it could conceivably, if everybody was cooperating, serve as a land bridge from China to Iran at a point in time. Do you think that the Pakistani government might be willing to go beyond this rhetoric and actually either itself provide assistance to Iran or allow its territory to be used as a transit point for Chinese assistance to Iran?
On some level, I think they are already cooperating. I don't want to speak on behalf of the government, and I don't want to claim anything they haven't claimed. But it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility that they're cooperating on some level already. Again, I don't want to create all this. You've seen a lot of fake news, by the way. I thought the India-Pakistan thing had fake news. Holy shit! This one had a lot of fake news, a lot of AI videos, a lot of stuff was shared this time around, and it was coming out of mostly the Israeli side. So it does seem like you can tell which side is losing with the amount of fake stuff that they make up.
Yeah.
Pakistan could definitely. Here's the bottom line: if Pakistan suspects that, because it's going to be a calculation of, it's going to be a risk analysis thing, right? The nation state is a ruthless beast. It's going to see whether or not Iran, the regime potentially collapsing, God forbid, or Iran going into chaos and disarray is one of three scenarios. It becomes an Iraq or a Libya, right, or a Syria. You have Shia militias triggered all over the region. You have all the leftovers of the equipment and ammunitions and munitions being distributed amongst all of these militias. You practically lose Balochistan. We could never afford the regime to. This is what I look like. This is what it looks like to me. I think Pakistan would be both happy if the regime sustained the Islamic revolution, and Iran potentially became a nuclear armed state. That would be good for Pakistan because a lot of the burden of nuclear deterrence for the whole of the Muslim world would be lifted off Pakistan's shoulders. Pakistan faced a lot of economic and a lot of intervention and chaos because of its nuclear capabilities. It's always suffered. Pakistan would be secured on the border. Pakistan does not enjoy strategic depth. It's a very narrow country. So we would not only like the regime to be sustained, we would also like Iran to win, whether as a potential nuclear state outside of this conflict or without any nuclear assets, but have a clear diplomatic and military victory over Israel. I think it's different for the Gulf countries because they don't want the regime to collapse, but they don't want to have a very sharp-fanged Iran as well. They want it to break its teeth, Israel to break Iran's teeth or bloody its nose, but not to let the regime collapse. As far as a soft coup is concerned, whether they can somehow appease the religious sentiment with Iran and settle down and force it to settle down, and at the same time potentially denuclearize it, I don't know if that's even a possibility. I don't even know if there's a possibility at this point. The way I think Israel's actions have given away the ghost because the way it wanted to jump the escalation ladder very quickly with the kind of assassinations it did, using Afghani and Indian citizens who were settled in the Balochistan region and all over Iran, using all of these foreign nationals and local dissidents to carry out terrorism, domestic terrorism. I think that desperation was there even before they started the attack. They were fully aware of the fact that they couldn't. They wanted to do a swift operation, quickly decapitate the regime, and it's very. I think the regime played it cool. They climbed the escalation ladder, with the same strategic patience that they had intended to initially, and always intended to, and always displayed. And I don't think that's something that Israel can tolerate. So I think the answer is no. Pakistan would definitely not let the regime collapse. I think it would be calamitous to Pakistan. Pakistan lost hundreds of thousands of people when Afghanistan collapsed in the 90s in the thousands when America invaded, and thousands of people at the time of the Soviet invasions as well. Pakistan would never allow for such a chaos to be brewing in its neighbor, especially in such a well-armed and structured society and a popular society. And I think Pakistan could potentially become a land bridge for China because, for example, we already owe the Iranians millions of dollars per day because of the gas pipeline that is at the border, and we're not using it because of our fear of the Western sanctions. We have had a gas agreement with them to connect through Pakistan, India, and China for gas needs, and the gas pipeline is right at the border. The Iranis built it, and we even put in the clause that you could charge us, I think, $1 million a day for every time we don't use it. I think it's been more than 2 or 3 years. So we owe them millions of dollars. We have gas needs. China has gas and oil needs. Um, Iran, if Iran is secure, the Makran coast is secure, and Pakistan's only geographical value as such a narrow country, which is an access to the hot water, is actualized when you have a peaceful Balochistan and a peaceful Sistan, with Iran and Pakistan, cooperating on trade. So for all of those geographical, historical, religious, cultural reasons, and we would never allow for this. I think that as far as what you mentioned was concerned, that the Pakistani chief of army staff, our head of military, who is also the field marshal and is the de facto leadership of Pakistan. That's the military figurehead who actually leads the Pakistan. And sometimes they're a full dictator when they declare a dictatorship, and sometimes they have a hybrid regime. And this time around, we have a hybrid regime where we have a civil government, and the army pretty much runs the show in terms of foreign policy and security. This meeting was already scheduled. This luncheon was already scheduled. I suspect specifically for the Iran conflict. I can imagine it was a tough meeting. The official statements that have come out of the military are that it was a reiteration of we appreciated each other for stopping the conflict, for cooler heads that prevailed when it was with India. We reaffirmed bilateral cooperation and counterterrorism, and we are going to explore the avenues of mineral exploration and cryptocurrency and AI. It was BS. It was just a simple whatever BS statement. It's a nothing statement, and it's a wait and see policy for Pakistanis, because in the next few days we'll know what the government's actually decided. But it would be as a Pakistani, it would be absurd if the Pakistani government cooperated. I would be hard pressed to believe
cooperated with the Americans and the Israelis. You mean
with the Americans? It would be absurd.
Yeah, I agree completely. But in this crazy time we live in, who knows? So my last question to you, brother, is from where you sit, what does it seem, who's winning in your opinion at this particular point in time? Is anybody winning? And I know we have so little information that we can rely upon it, and we're not military experts, so it's not easy for us to have any kind of a reliable judgment about that. But what's your best sense based on what you've seen and heard?
In the first 48 hours, I spoke to a lot of Iranian friends, some journalists, some people in the know, sensible people. I also spoke to some Pakistani experts, some military people, ex-military people, strategists. They were all shocked and disappointed by the intelligence failures. This much I would like to make clear, because I think the Iranian regime, the management, the intelligence bureaus, they had a year. A very similar assassination style was done with Ismail Haniya, and they had a full year to deal with those kinds of elements. I'm not saying that when you are faced with the full onslaught of the CIA and the Mossad, if any country would not crumble, these are the premier, intelligence apparatus in the world. So given the circumstances, it seems on face value like an intelligence failure. We were disappointed. People were, I wouldn't say panicked, because we're not a panicky kind of people. Muslims are a very sort of laid back, sort of lethargic kind of, I think the hot countries generally. So it wasn't a panic. It was a sense of like a slow dread, like a building dread, like this is bad. And people had a deep fear, because the Shia Muslims have like religious sentiments with the Pope, for example, with the Ayatollah. And the rest of the Muslim world, the Sunni world, has like some vague religious, quasi-religious sentiments with fellow Muslims or the figurehead of the Ayatollah, and that people were afraid that that they're going to assassinate him, or they're going to do one of these operations. And there's so many. We were also shocked by the speed of the escalation, because people had been lulled into a sense of assurity, because Trump will negotiate, Iran will never allow the mainland to get attacked. They'll figure something out. The negotiations are happening; they're on the table. After the first 48 hours and the initial panic, I think everyone started to have a good laugh, because they'd never seen Israeli cities being, and there's no other word for it, terrorized. And there's and I know this sounds messed up, because it's like this messed up kind of reverse, because I don't think anyone desires to revel and enjoy anyone's pain, but my God, the Israelis, they've not helped, and strategically speaking, I think the fact that Iran isn't panicking, that they're slowly escalating, climbing the ladder, slowly. First, they're dumping out all of their junk missiles and they're terrorizing the population, getting people to. First, they developed that pattern of doing it at midnight. That was hilarious. They would force everyone underground, cities on lockdown. And then sometimes they would be like, maybe we won't, maybe we will. And then slowly they built up to the actual, slightly more impressive technology. I think the humongous stockpile for ballistic missiles is a real advantage because David Sling has been exposed, Arrow has been exposed, Iron Dome has been exposed. What else? And Israeli jets, if they refuel or if they start using any of these depots in the Gulf countries, the Gulf countries will become fair game. And they don't want to become fair game. All right? They don't want, they're providing defensive capability to Israel right now, but if they start providing offensive capability and Iran starts hitting the Gulf, what are the other regimes going to do? What is the global economy going to do? We have a joke here in Pakistan about Dubai. It's in Urdu. We always say that ek patakha bhi phat gaya na is Dubai ke andar. The whole Gulf is done, and that means that even if a firecracker was to go off in Dubai, the whole Gulf will be done. Like. Their whole economies are like a joke, man.
Yeah, they're very fragile.
I don't see. Which country? I just ask you as a layperson, which country has criminalized photographing the skyline? Which country is not allowing citizens to exit? Which country is arresting people left, right, and center? Which country has shut down independent media?
Yeah,
the one who's panicking.
And which country is begging the Americans for help?
Begging. If anything, if the Zionist shills on Twitter and online, all these spaces, all these right-wing MAGA characters, all these anti-woke and what is a woman, all of these, all of these characters are begging for is American intervention. Then that speaks volumes to what the actual state is doing. I'll leave you with this. I'll leave the audience with this. I have recently had the pleasure of witnessing one segment of the American security state talking to the other segment, which was Tucker Carlson speaking with Ted Cruz. It was the American intelligence on one side and the American intelligence on one side. And one of them was telling them that they have to buy up Greenland and they have to secure the Mexican border because they have to fight China. And the other one was telling them, yeah, I agree with you. We have to fight China, but first we have to go through Israel, which was like, it was the funniest thing I ever saw.
On that note, brother, we're going to call it a day. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're almost at the 90-minute mark.
Thank you so much, Dimitri.
So I just want to somebody in the chat has asked several times if I'm an agent for the Mossad. So I've been accused of many things, but never being an agent for the Mossad. So answer's no. Why you would ask that question? I don't know. If I'm doing anything which suggests to you that I might be on the Israeli side, I'm clearly doing something wrong. But sorry.
No, you're doing a great job, Dimitri. And I think the guy's just trolling at this point. I don't think anyone would be convinced that you're an Israeli asset.
No, Master MD, I'm not just commenting. Master MD, I'm not working for the Mossad. Anyway, listen, thank you, everybody. Anything else you want to say, brother, before we sign off? Because I don't want to cut you off. Was there anything you thought?
We can hope and pray for the best. We hope that Iran is successful in this and Israel is punished for its aggression. We can hope that the Americans do not intervene. Empire is ending. Do they want to end it with a bang, or do they want it to end, peacefully in the night, passing away in its sleep? If they want to end it with a bang, Bismillah. Be our guest. Come to Desert X or Desert Y, and we'll fight you there. You know what I mean? That's what they think of us, by the way. So Bismillah.
Yeah.
We already have too many people, at this point. So
let us hope. Cooler heads.
Yeah.
Take care, my friends. Stay safe. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As always, a pleasure to speak with you all. And we should be doing another live stream about these momentous events sometime in the next few days. Take care and peace out, everybody. Take care, Aman.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.